Alright, here we go. So check it out. We're looking at dog's tails. What in the world does that mean, Mr. Fowler? Are we talking about geography? Well, dog's tails has everything to do with spatial geography, in particular when you're studying maps. So, since there's a strong emphasis on maps, in particular, we're learning about the uses of maps and how to use maps geographically in the first unit. It makes perfect sense that we're going to learn about dog's tails. Dog's tails. Dogstails. Every map needs them, right? Check it out. Let's take a look. It's an acronym. As if you hadn't already figured that out. I know you guys are pretty smart and witty, right? D stands for the date. Okay. Why in the world why is a date so important when you're studying maps? Simply put, it gives historic context, like it says right there on the first section on this slide. Without historic context, you might be looking at a map or information that is actually really old and no longer is pertinent to what you're trying to study. For example, we're going to learn in class how there was a lot of political change, a lot of political boundaries changed and moved over in Europe. New countries were added in after World War II, and even today, in some countries like in the Middle East, and some countries like very recently in Eastern Europe, even you see where there's new countries being carved out in the last 20 years in places all over the world. So it's very important that you make sure that you understand the time frame in which your map is trying to show historic context. Other things here, hints at possible biases. We're going to talk about, and I'm going to show you guys an example of where you've got bias in your maps. Some countries might not recognize other countries and might not even put them on the map, like North Korea. Doesn't recognize South Korea and considers Seoul and South Korea to be part of North Korea, and just pretends like that's the case, right? You've also got issues with the East China, the Eastern Sea. What in the world is the East Sea? Well, the Japanese might call it something different. We'll take a look. Pinpoints developmental stages, can be compared to other maps, and also clarifies available technology. Once again, just to kind of reiterate the point I was just now making, here is a map that shows you Japan, and it shows you Korea. Here is North Korea that does not claim claims South Korea as part of their territory, even though they don't have political power south of this of the DMZ. But then you've got the Sea of Japan, which is what the map is calling it. But then also they notice that they put in parentheses the East Sea, because, well, that sea is to the east of Korea, and they call it the East Sea, which means that they are basically staking a claim in the Eastern Sea as part of maybe an extension of their own territory, whereas Japan is like, nuh-uh. And there's issues, like major political issues going on, even about who controls some of the islands that are kind of here in the middle. It's actually pretty petty when you really think about it, but the point that I'm trying to show you is that there is a lot of importance on who has produced the map, the author of the map, which we're going to look at as part of Dogtails, and also the date in which it was created. Moving on, O is for orientation. Well, when we're dealing with orientation, we're basically looking at which way is up. Traditionally, you're going to see this. It kind of points in the directions in which the map is going to show. And that's very, very important, because we already talked a little bit about map projections in the 5 themes of geography PowerPoint. But the simple fact of the matter is, not every map is going to be showing north directly up. Not every map is going to be showing south and west and east, as you might think. There are some maps that might even show the world as completely inverted, as you see here with the upside down world map. Who says north has to be up? Or perhaps this map that shows the land areas as blue and the oceans as kind of a landish brownish color. And then of course you have various other map projections that might show the world or a region within the world at strange angles, and well, is up north on this, is to the right east, or to the left west, or to the south is it down? So there's a bunch of different ways that you need to be thinking about maps when you're looking at them. And Dogstails, the O being standing for orientation, just kind of points out the fact that you got to be aware as geographers of the fact that not every map that points up is actually pointing at north. So when we're in geography, we're going to practice saying north when we mean north or up on a map. We're going to use correct orientation, and we're not going to be saying north, up, down, left, or right when we're talking about maps, because it's just not right. We're geographers, right? Let's be geographers today. Check it out. The G is for grid. When I'm talking about grid, I'm talking about absolute location. All right, I talked a little bit about that on the 5 themes PowerPoint, the first lecture video. You've got latitude and longitude. All right. Also, you can see grids being used to show road maps or blocks or whatnot on a large-scale map, and you've got the grid permits easy ways of finding stuff. It's kind of like when you're studying math and you're graphing points. I feel your pain in math, guys. I'm not good at math. I have a heavy respect in it, but I'm just not all that good. All right. And so, but nonetheless, you've got this graph here is showing different points, and can this point here be anywhere else and be mathematically the same as it is? Well, the answer to that question is no. If this point was up here, it would be an entirely different point, wouldn't it? If this point was down here, it would be an entirely different point. In the same way, the grid uses meridians and parallels to graph on the Earth where things are, showing you mathematically that there can be no place, or that one place cannot be in 2 different areas on the Earth. We may look a little more at measuring latitude and longitude, and even looking at time zones. It's really just going to depend on how much time we have, and whether or not I believe that's something that we should be getting into for the sake of this class. But nonetheless, very, very important for understanding location, and very, very important for just having a spatial awareness of the world around you. So moving on, S, dogs. Tails, okay, so we have to have plural on the dogs there in order for us to have the 2 S's. S is for scale, and we've already talked about scale, so I'm going to just recap it real quick. You've got large and small scale maps, and you know the word large to refer to a small area, large detail, and the word small to refer to a large area and small detail is kind of relative. For example, I'm going to ask you a question on a test. I might say, what is an example of the smallest scale map? Well, if the world is one of the choices, then obviously the world map is going to be a very small scale map because it's showing very small details over a large area. Okay, but then a large scale map shows great large details over a very small area, like a city block. If you look here, this is an example of a small scale, a large scale map, because it's showing you a small area, even down to the blocks. We're looking at, it says Teachers College, so we're apparently looking at some kind of a college campus. And you can imagine these little black dots might represent buildings or places where you can go and interact within this area, whatever it is. Notice the scale too is a ratio scale, so 1 inch on this map is going to be 1 inch on the actual Earth's surface. Right? It says 1 inch equals 2,000 feet. That wouldn't actually be a 1/24 scale map, so I'm not really sure exactly why it's, what it means by that. But nonetheless, you've got okay, I see. It's just showing you different ways that you can. It's showing you the ratio, and it's showing you the written scale, and so forth. Some of those different scales we looked at. And this is a small scale, large scale. It's not as small scale as the first map, but it's showing you a larger area, but still showing you some pretty good details. And then finally, when you look at Figure 4C, you're looking at a fairly large area, especially in comparison with the original 2 maps, that's showing you less detail but larger areas. So this one here would be an example of a small scale map. Small scale, small detail. Okay, so not to harp too much on that one. If you guys have any questions about any of these things we're talking about right now in the lecture video, please make time to ask me. You can send me a text or a message, however you want to do it, and I will respond to you as soon as I can. Everybody needs to understand these concepts because we do not do these lecture videos for nothing, right? Scale continued. Large scale maps objects are relatively large. On a small scale, they're relatively small. I just told you all that, and this map basically recaps what the last slide went over. So we're going to move on. T is for title. The title tells you what you're looking at. Okay, so if you're looking at a map of South Carolina, the title should be the map of South Carolina. All right, if I ask you to flip to a page in a book and it's showing you population statistics for the southeastern states, that's probably what the title of the map is going to be, or some variation of that. Often, the title has a hidden message that could be, possibly you might see a hidden message of some sort. That might indicate bias, it might not, but nonetheless, just keep in mind that in the same way that people that write books are trying to tell you something, maybe from their perspective, but the goal is to tell you or teach you about something, it's no different for people that make maps. They're trying to show you something based on the perspective of the person writing the map. And no matter how unbiased they try to be, there's always going to be some element of we already talked about distortion of the physical features, but maybe even distortion of what the author of the map is trying to show you. So keep that in mind when you're looking at title that could have a hidden message possible, but nonetheless, it's supposed to tell you what you're looking at, kind of like Kurdistan here, which we're going to talk about how Kurdistan isn't actually a place, you see. So perhaps the hidden message here is that, well, maybe we should allow the Kurds to have enough autonomy to establish their own autonomous political state between Iraq and Turkey and Syria and all that in the Middle East. We will talk about it. Author, I've talked about this a few times. I've hinted around the idea that there is going to be an author of a map. You want to know who drew the map, what country sponsors the map, what organization. You want to know if it's legit. You also want to know, once again, about bias. Not all the time is it going to be that authors show you what should be over what they want you to see. All right, so very, very important to note the author of the map that you're looking at. Moving on, I is for index. Index can be kind of tricky. Most of the time, whenever you go to the mall, or if you go to the outlets at Myrtle Beach, or Tanger Outlets, or I hear we're going to get one of those in Augusta soon. Whenever you go to these places and you see something like this, right, this is the index. This is what you're looking at as an index, and it basically just gives reference to where things are. It's very similar to situation or relative location, but you're looking at it and it's just giving you a synopsis of the different places and what they do. It even categorizes them in some cases. So that's index. It makes the map more usable. At least it or I guess depending on what it is you're using the map for, it can make the map more usable. All right, and so that's index. Legend and index are not the same. Now, real quick, since I'm getting towards the end of the presentation, I do want to point out to you that not all of these elements are always going to be on every map you look at. Sometimes you're going to see a map that's showing you industrial establishments in Europe, and you're going to see a legend, and it's just going to look like railroads and factories and materials, raw materials, and things like that. But and in this case, you're looking at this map that shows that you would use this legend for, but you're not seeing things like an index. You're not even seeing a title, right? So not all of these are going to be on every map you use, but they're good to look for in terms of how you're going to use the map. So L is for legend, and a legend explains the symbols. Now, looking back at the index for a second, this is not a legend because you're not explaining symbols down here. What it's doing is it's got red dots or numbers or whatnot on the map where the buildings are, and then it's showing you underneath what those buildings actually are, or what what service can be provided in those buildings. You see the difference between an index and a legend. So please don't get those mixed up when you're making your map of Midland Valley, because we are going to do that in class. And then lastly, the second S at the end of Tails is for situation, and we've already looked at situation in the 5 themes when we were looking at location. Situation on a map shows relative location. It is normally going to be on a map presented as an inset map. What does that mean? Well, if you look here at this globe, This is a world view inset map within a map of what? Hawaii. So the title of this map here is Hawaii, the USA. You're trying to find, you're looking at it for reference of Hawaii. But where in the world is Hawaii? There's nothing but ocean around it. So in order to give you perspective and understand its situation on the earth, they show the United States, and then over here they circle what it is you're looking at in a broader view. Cabinda Republic in Africa, you see Congo right here. Well, Congo is a relatively large state, and you can see here this little extension of Congo, and then this little area right here is what this map is actually of. So it gives you a larger spatial, it shows you the spatial situation of the Cabinda Republic in Africa. So that is what that's the main point in studying Dogstails. And you are going to be looking at Dogstails and completing a project in class over the course of at least 2 days in groups. So be ready for that. Thank you.